Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series, live from the Dover International Speedway in Dover, Delaware. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the move tonight is Blake McCandless and Ricky Springer, with Ryan Bauer punching the buttons in the virtual production trailer upstairs. We'll also be joined tonight by the driver of the number 15 Jim Beaver Esports Ford Mustang and the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, Michael Guerrilla. Ryan Bauer and everyone else all set for what should be an exciting race tonight here from Dover International Speedway. First things first, Blake, a track that has a lot of history and a very difficult one.
It certainly so. As you even take a look at the Google Earth image of this track, one thing that always sticks out about Dover is the concrete here. With how much rain this racetrack gets on a regular basis, it's why they went to concrete in 1995, and it's what makes this racetrack for a lot of drivers, whether it's virtual or real, one of the most unique racetracks that we visit on the circuit.
And we were talking about this earlier tonight, Ricky. It's one that it's also difficult to make sure you don't get involved in trouble. Back in 2019 in the Road to Pro Series, just 8 of 138 drivers who started that round did not have an incident point. What's your thoughts on what we should expect to see tonight in 2020, especially with the different tire model compared to that time, as well as the Ford F-150 here tonight?
Yeah, I think that when one guy gets into the wall here, everything breaks loose, especially with the way the walls kind of come in at you coming off of the corners. And, you know, the reason that there were only 8 guys without an incident point is it's so easy to just get into that wall coming off the corner. I mean, it comes up on you so fast after the track, of course, with lots of banking in the corners, and then almost just goes to flat, it feels like, when you're in the car down the straightaways. And it's just really easy to lose control. And once one person does, the whole rest of the field is going to get involved in it, and it's just part of a small, tight racetrack.
And mind you, as first things first, we look at the weather. Fairly cool today. 67 degrees is the air temp Fahrenheit. 103 degrees is the track temp. Partly cloudy skies with this concrete surface, which could be very difficult to build upon. But on top of that, Blake, these upcoming races, including tonight, a lot of them will test the ability of the drivers to keep their cars clean and not make mistakes or get involved in any incidents, or else they could be shuffled out of the top 20.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Justin, that this is the portion of the schedule that is going to really separate the men from the boys here in this Road to Pro season. You take a look, Dover, Las Vegas, a narrow mile and a half. Obviously, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park going to be very, very critical for a lot of these guys to get back into that swing of running on the road course. Then you have a brand new configuration at Texas, and then 2 shorter tracks, Martinsville, which who the heck knows what's going to happen when we get to the paperclip. And then obviously Phoenix, when everything is on the line, and all those guys that are right around the bubble are going to be running all the way on that dog leg on restarts. It's going to be an insane ending to the Road to Pro series, and it all starts here at the Monster Mile.
A crazy stretch of races, including a summertime race at Las Vegas and a road course race mixed in, as well as Martinsville. But these drivers are all set to tackle the Monster Mile. Let's take a look at how they will start for tonight's action in the Road to Pro series. Jake Matheson sets the pole time with a 22 flat over his teammate Will Norton. He'll be also joined by his teammate Caden Honeycutt, making a Nexus 1, 2, 3 on the starting grid. The first Total Advantage Motorsport machine up at the front is Alan Bowes. He'll start in front of his teammate Steven Wilson, who's in P5. Zach Nichols starts in 6th, with Alec Martinez up to 7th spot. Justin Lisenby starts in P number 8, with Ryan Doucette and Femi Olot rounding out the top 10, Blake.
Jacob Hall, another Nexus Esports driver that'll start in 11th. 12th will be Mitchell DeJong. 13th is Briar LaPrade. 14th, Eric Justice. 15th is Adam Gilliland, who's made his way up to the top split these last couple of races. Donovan Strauss in 16th, looking to rebound after some bad luck his last pair of races. Isaac Annis joined top split in 17th. Michael Finlayson in 18th. 19th is Anthony Burrows. And 20th, Michael, is Boyd Hogan.
And on the row 11, you'll find Garrett Maines, the number 1 machine, starting 21st. Brian Mercurio is going to be rolling off in 22nd. Seth the Merchant, 23rd, with Michael Gonzalez on his outside, 24th. Jordy Lopez in 25th, with Brian Blackford, 26th. Drew Freenage in 27th, with Dylan Jones on his outside in P28. He's the last driver to take a time at a 26:137. The following drivers did not take a time. Daniel Roper, P29 starting spot. Braden Buyos started 30th. Jarrett Liebert, 31st. 32nd goes to Blake Neer. Casey Tucker, 33rd. And Trayton Lapsevich rounds out your 34 truck field for tonight's event.
Of note, Trayton Lapsevich, just prior to the start of tonight's action, had an internet failure. Has been struggling to get his truck into the track for tonight. Very likely, unfortunately, may miss the start in the next few moments or so. But swing over to you first things first, Michael, for tonight. It's a very difficult racetrack. We've talked about that a little bit tonight. What are expectations of what type of race we see for these trucks?
I definitely think it'll be very close on these restarts, especially. You'll see the guys be side by side for a little bit, but it all string out to single file at some point during this race. We'll see who's got the fast car as they come through the field. I'm keeping my eye specifically on Mitchell DeJong, who's up there in the point standings of the top 10. He's starting in 12th, a little bit lower than what we're normally seeing, but I'm going to be watching him come through the field in that VRS Toyota. But yeah, I just expect a lot of narrow racing on the exits as the corners that close up very tightly on the exits, and look for side-by-side action throughout.
Absolutely. This facility opened in 1969. 24 degrees of banking in the corners, 9 degrees of banking down the straights on this concrete surface. In same date, July the 7th, 2020, 12 p.m. start time. 3 green-white checkers are available, 170 laps the distance, 170 miles on the docket, with a tire limit of 5. That includes 1 on the truck and 4 in the pits tonight. A fairly cool track tonight for a summer start. Nexus Esports in control of the field. Jake Matheson brings him the green flag. We're underway for the Monster Mile.
And Nexus Esports, like they've done the last 3 races, will lead it off from the front row. And Justin, you bring up a great point. Only 67 degrees is the ambient temperature right now. So a lot of these teams going to have a lot more grip than they were anticipating as they rocket off into 3 and 4. They're single file through the top 5, a little bit of side-by-side. Back for about the 8th and 9th positions right now. Jacob Hall trying to hold on.
First lap goes to Matheson. And Nexus Esports had a very strong run at Darlington as a group. Will Norden, the second place truck, came away with the victory. Caden Honeycutt was also contender much of the race. It was talked about throughout the week, Ricky, that these trucks have been very fast in preparation for tonight.
Yeah, very fast, and, you know, as we're seeing early, a dominant truck, you could even say. I mean, these guys put in so much effort and so much work on a week-to-week basis to get these trucks where they need to be to run up front and lead this Road to Pro field with these trucks. And, I mean, the amount of effort shows. You see a lot of teams put in a lot of time into this stuff, and I just think that they, with the sheer amount of people that they have working on those cars and, you know, the amount of time that they put into it, they're setting themselves up for victory.
Several of the drivers already single file along the bottom line, the preferred line around the racetrack, but several also trying to get off the top line. One of them right now is still the 18 machine, Mitchell DeJong, still stuck on the top side with damage, all while Will Norden still follows the conga line on the bottom side. Blake, this is a track that is very important to be able to try and hug that bottom line with these trucks.
Mitchell DeJong is going to get spun, but he saves it in turn 1 as he was halfway sideways. It looked like a little bit of contact with, I believe, Garrett Maines as they got into turn 1. Of course, that VRS Toyota, as we just mentioned beforehand, had a little bit of damage on the nose of that machine, and DeJong looked like he just kind of cut across Maines right there. Don't want to say who was at fault for that one, but a scary moment here, and what a save there by DeJong to not wipe out the back half of the field.
For those wondering where the damage came from on the start, ran to the back end of Femi Oldlot's truck. Now that could potentially cause some trouble in terms of some of the potential temps, because I want to go over to you, Michael, on this one. At tracks such as Richmond, especially when you got that type of damage, the temps seem to overheat a lot in the Cup cars.
Yeah, once you get any kind of front-end damage, you're always nervous about what it'll do to the temperatures in the cars, especially on these trucks, as you see all the damage on the front end of Mitchell DeJong. That's a pretty significant amount of damage to the front end, so I won't be surprised if he's going to be managing his temps here for a little bit, just probably having to clutch the car into the corner to see if he can get those temperatures to drop, because if you can do that for a few laps, you can keep it sort of cool, but he's probably got a lot of tape on there, so it'll be interesting to see how he has to manage that up until the pit stops.
Want to swing this over to you, Blake, as well, because you did compete for several Road to Pro Series events in 2020. In fact, had similar damage in your split at Atlanta.
It was after Brad Mahar got into the outside wall off of 2. This was all the way back in Atlanta, if you can imagine. This was several months ago when I still thought I had a shot at this thing. Ran into the back of him after he got into the wall. Wasn't that much nose damage, only 12 seconds, but we had to pit and take tape off the nose or else we were going to blow an engine. Now, De Jong is in a good spot right now because the ambient temperature, again, as we mentioned, is only 67 degrees. So that is much, much cooler than I'm sure what a lot of these teams tested. And so De Jong may be helped by the fact that it's very cool outside. Maybe these drivers, once they got into the server and they realized how cool it was, didn't have the time to make the adjustments they necessarily wanted to. But no doubt about it that with the cool temperatures, that's only helping Mitchell try to handle this damage.
Taking a look again still as the top 3 still all Nexus machines. Alan Bose, the first non-Nexus truck, is behind them. And Ricky, it's been an interesting start to this one already. 11 laps in, and Nexus looking nice and calm, in control with the clean air, and has not allowed any major runs for anyone behind them, especially from the Total Advantage Motorsport trucks.
Yeah, and I mean, it's to be expected from these Nexus trucks. I mean, they come out here week in and week out and continue to put the best equipment out on the track. But, you know, what's going through my mind right now, Justin, is just who's going to be the first non-Nexus truck to make a move inside of that top 3, and when are they going to do it? Of course, everybody wants to stay out single file and try and keep those trucks as clean as possible until later on in the race. But you have to wonder if somebody like Alan Bose is going to try and make that move just a little bit early to gain that track position before pit stops.
Still very early on in this run, to say the very least. But an update involving Treydan Lapcevich will not make it to the green flag at all. Missed the start due to technical issues. 30 hours of testing went into the trucks for Slip Angle Motorsports and Bobby Dale Earnhardt's Legacy Esports this week. Now not able to make it to the start after all that prep work. Some of the highest running trucks in that alliance, Boyd Hogan in 22nd, Casey Tucker in 29th, Brian Blackford in 31st position.
And of course, that's always a very difficult thing to deal with when you put in all the work and preparation, and not just a racing incident that takes you out, that maybe you get contact after lap 1 or something, but something that's completely out of your control, like a connection issue. It's very frustrating because, you know, you have to put in all this work to be able to go out and run where you see the Nexus Esports cars up front, where you see the Total Advantage machines that are also nestled up and inside the top 10. It takes all that work and preparation and getting familiar with the setup and the truck to be able to run out here, and you have to do it. So very unfortunate there for Lapcevich, because that's got to be frustrating when and something out of your control puts you out of this race.
Lapcevich, of course, set to make his debut this season in the NASCAR Pinty Series, and the younger brother of the former Pinty Series champion, Caden Lapcevich. One of the drivers has been slipping back the field, though, just found his way finally back to the bottom, so that Justin Lesbia's machine dropped all the way from the top 10 rookie back to 15.
Yeah, and that's just something that can happen at a place like Dover here. You get stuck on the outside and just truck or bumper to bumper, practically pushing each other around this track and just driving so hard to try and stay on the bottom side. If you get hung out up there, I mean, there's really nothing you can do. Just wait for a break and just hope that that gap isn't closing in on you and that you can dive down to the bottom.
Absolutely. Still trying to figure out the shuffling about at the very least. It remains, just took him to the inside. We apologize for the technical issues as we are on lap 23 of 170 of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series at Dover International Speedway. Justin Prince, Blake McCandless, Ricky Springer with you, along with Michael Garolia and Ryan Bauer in the director's seat. The leaders are making their way down the back straightaway. Jake Matheson still in the lead. Will Norton in second. Caden Honeycutt's in P3. Alan Bowe, Stephen Wilson, and a top 5 choo-choo train point away. Zach Nichols up to P6. Ryan Doucette to 7. Oldlot, Martinez, and Derek Justice round out the top 10. These trucks making their way now through 1 and 2 this time, Blake.
Certainly are, and nobody's really had anything for these Nexus Esports trucks, as now they extend an advantage that is now about half a second over the fourth place running Alan Bowe. Stephen Wilson directly behind him, an awfully strong run for those TA machines as well.
Yeah, and as they work their way down the front straightaway, still those trucks up front, Jake Matheson leading the field. He's going to work his way through 1 and 2, trying to pull a little bit of a gap, but not being able to.
These trucks have been still shuffling themselves about and pulled away now by 1.4 seconds from the rest of the field. Matheson slowly growing the gap on Will Norton. No one's leaped for a pass quite yet. Back along the front straightaway, all the laps led so far have gone to Jake Matheson, Blake.
Single file they run for about the top, let's call it 5 or 6 cars or so. There's a 5-man just gaggle up at the front of the field. Bowes and Wilson at the tail end of that.
And picture now back here at Dover International Speedway. And as you can see, that single file choo-choo train continues to pull away by an average about a tenth or two a second. One of the drivers, though, Ricky, that we're talking about, who is trying to get on the bounce back, is still in decent shape in the points, has been Ryan Doucette, who had a rough race at Michigan and a rough race at Darlington.
Yeah, and he was in the points lead for a little while, and I don't think a lot of people in the Road to Pro Series expected that from him. Ryan Doucette has always had a lot of talent on the iRacing service and has always shown himself to be a good competitor on really anything he gets in, but really not a lot of people had eyes on him coming into the Road to Pro Series, and I think he was extremely overlooked. I mean, like you said, coming off of a string of a couple bad races, but today's sure looking good in the 7th spot right now, and let's hope we don't jinx him here and he can run up inside the top 10 all race long.
Without the drops, inside the top 5, second in fact behind his teammate still, and Jake Matheson with the drop. He is inside the top 3 behind Stephen Wilson and Alan Bowes in that category. That's how strong that machine has been despite some of the struggles the past couple races. Still though, Michael, when it comes to these types of runs early on where everyone's just single file, trying to follow each other, give each other space, what's going through your head as a driver to try and keep yourself in this position while making sure you still have that give and take?
Yeah, once it gets single file like this, as we're now working lap 31 of a run, it's kind of just time where you're setting yourself up and you're looking around to see what everyone else is doing. For example, Ryan Doucette's looking at Zach Nichols like, where am I stronger than him? Am I saving enough tire to where I'm able to keep up with him? All these different things go through your mind when you're just sitting here going through a run. You just want to, at the end of the day, just keep your track position as much as you can. Just ride it out to the end of the pit stop cycle, and just think about when you're actually going to pit. Are you going to undercut somebody? You're going to stay out to the end, maybe even lead a lap or save an extra set of tires if you need to. This race is 170 laps. It'll be interesting to see if we can maybe do the 1 stop, but it'd be different to see if that is viable or even if the 2 stop is possible. But yeah, just a matter of riding along and just figuring out how you are compared to your competitors.
That actually leads to the next question towards your direction. What is the strategy, in your opinion, for tonight with, for some drivers, they reported getting to as far as 72 laps on the fuel tank in the trucks this week?
If we can only get to 72 laps, then it's definitely not viable. Then the strategy would be to split it into 2 separate stops throughout the run. But I mean, if you can clutch it and save it, it's definitely beneficial to do it for that 1 stop. But obviously, it's going to be tough ass to save 13 laps of fuel, especially with how much in the throttle you are in these trucks.
Some of the trucks are going backwards, though, Blake, especially with the Burn Kligerman Esports machines, and a caution flag is out. First one of the race involving Daniel Roper and Donovan Strauss, one of those trucks we were just about to talk about. Tango in turn 1 for the first yellow.
Yeah, we were just about to mention some of the bad luck that some of the Burton Kligerman Esports drivers were facing, and it's not going to get any easier as Daniel Roper and Donovan Strauss had a little bit of contact as they went into turn one. It looked like Daniel Roper tried to shut the door and block him a little bit, and it looks like Roper about had it saved as you get a nice look on your screen there. Here they come out of turn number 4, Strauss looking low. Roper's going to throw the block on him, and just a little bit of contact there as they make it. Roper looks like he has it saved in the overcorrect, and that's going to have smoke billowing out of Roper's machine, as well as heavy damage for the 51 of Donovan Strauss. So as Strauss was moving on back, he had started up in 16th and fell back to the 23rd position. Wasn't going his way after he's had some bad luck in these last couple of races, and obviously Dover is not being kind to the youngster either.
The previous drop for Donovan Strauss, mind you, was Darlington. After his rough race there with some of the contact in 1 and 2. Now the pit lane is open for the first time tonight, Blake, as a result of the caution flag. Or I should say, Ricky.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to see all these trucks come down on pit road so early, only having that one set of tires sitting there. It looks like most everybody taking 4 tires, so that's gonna shuffle things up. I believe Ryan Doucette may have only taken 2, but I mean, just the tire limit, if we could speak on that for a second, is so different to the service of iRacing. A lot of drivers are used to coming down pit road and having the unlimited sets of tires that Goodyear would bring to the virtual track. And unfortunately now, for some people who are not the best at saving tires, they're being forced to learn the hard way and through fire, as you don't have a lot of sets of tires still in the pit road, and you really have to learn how to conserve them, but also you have to learn how to be smart with your strategies here and to make sure you don't take tires too early and then be the one guy and the odd man out at the end of the race when you don't have a new set of tires.
Everyone did take 4 tires to confirm, 3 sets remaining for all the drivers, but speeding penalties going to Ryan Doucette and Boyd Hogan under this caution. Big blow for Ryan Doucette, was inside the top 10 prior to that penalty.
Thing is, Justin, when you talk about losing all that track position, that's what's so hard. When you get up here to the top split in Road to Pro as somebody who choked in qualifying a number of times and lost that track position, you can have and be very fast and have that setup that can get you through on a long run. But if you don't have that track position, it is very hard to run up inside the top 5 or win if you don't have that track position. So that's going to be killer for Ryan Doucette, but luckily he has his teammates to lean back on and see how strong Nexus Esports has been so far in the early running tonight. So we'll just have to see him try to work his way back up through the field.
Can confirm as well that Donovan Strauss done for the night, along with Daniel Roper. Both drivers now DNF, the first drivers out of the race. Everybody else still running, though, outside of Trey Lapsevich. 31 trucks still on the lead lap. But with that pit stop exchange, one driver moved up to the point. Ricky, with a good pit stop, Will Norden was able to get 0.4 of a second quicker out of the box and also 0.9 quicker in the lane. That got him in front of his teammate Jake Matheson, and now he's the controlled truck for the restart.
Yeah, and I mean, it just goes to show how important the in racing. You think of a couple tenths being just what you would blink your eyes, and that's how fast it can go by. And of course, something that little can gain you a position on the track, and pit stops are so important. But one thing that Will was doing that you see a lot of drivers do, especially in real life, is practically pushing the car or truck in front of them down the pit lane, and that's what he was doing to make sure he got all of the time and that gap closed up before he got into his pit box. And fortunately for him, he got a good stop into his box and a great exit.
Some of the biggest movers so far on the field, too, to touch upon. Jarrett Liebert up to P20. Plus 11 on the night. Dylan C. Jones up plus 7. Plus 8 as well for Garrett Maines in this race. So right now, some drivers able to take advantage of some of the attrition, but also keeping it nice and conservative to try and just calmly cut their way to the field with some of the traffic, Blake.
Yeah, there have been a couple of drivers that have been able to make their way forward. Adam Gilliland started back in 15th, is now outside the top 10, utilizing some pit strategy. Isaac Gann, another one that we should talk about, started back in 17th and has worked his way up to 12th, and he's been working with Norse Force. So been running with Derek Justice, or at least in somewhat the same setups that they've had the last couple of weeks. And obviously Justice has had some awfully strong runs, nearly got the win last week at Darlington. And even as they continue to cycle through, a couple of guys will move forward up here on the leaderboard, so actually move Gann up to 11th. But there's a couple of guys that have been able to slowly make their way through the field. Jarrett Liebert, another one as well, 31st to 19th. So some big movers early on, but that's somewhat to be expected when you have a little bit of attrition like this, a little bit of a caution. And now I think the biggest question becomes, Justin, it's, we know cautions breed cautions. These early the early portion of these top split races seem to go pretty clean, but is this going to be the point where we see a potential catastrophic wreck on either straightaway because of how narrow it is here at Dover?
And don't forget, the safer barrier was added this year prior to the Pro Invitational Series for the Cup Series drivers, which took away an extra 2-3 feet of corner exit space here at Dover International Speedway on the sim. But it's a Nexus 1, 2, 3 at the head of the field. A total advantage for 5. Off and away we go. Green flag's back out. We're back on our way from Dover.
And as they rocket back into turn number 1, it's still Nexus Esports at the front. They sorted out single file for the top 5. It's side by side for 6. That's Femi Olad. He's alongside Zach Nichols looking to make his way forward. He nearly gets to the outside wall and scrapes it just a bit. They look 3 wide behind him. This Garrett Maines look to try to make a move down low.
Thought about going 3 wide, instead stayed 2 wide, right behind Alec Martinez, one of the Nexus Esports machines. Isaac Gann also make an appearance, though, in top split tonight here, Ricky. Showed some great speed in some of the air races coming into tonight. Now he gets to show the speed amongst that Norse Force group at the front of the field in top split.
Yeah, and he's running with the best of the best tonight in the top split Road to Pro Series, and he's not backing down one bit, inside the top 10 or right on the bubble of the top 10, should I say, right now. And I believe he's just trying to buy his time. I mean, a great finish for him if he can get it inside the top 10 tonight for a finish in top split, of course, the way the points lay out because of that. But, I mean, he's not taking his time here as he's going to make another position up there going by Derek Justice, and he's on the move.
Able to shuffle his way up that time, up to P number 9. Garrett Maines also looking to follow through, does have a bit of damage and some contact. Also connection issue for Jacob Hall. He's now off the racetrack. 30 trucks still running on the lead lap, coming to the end of lap 43 this time by. Once again, though, the conga line starts to form up again on the bottom side, Blake. Now it's going to be intriguing, though, how the strategy plays out if this does go green the rest of the way.
We were talking about, if these drivers could really make it to 72 laps to go. They're going to run about 130 laps on this run, so you think that lap 65 is where they're going to be splitting this run in half. I don't know if you could think about splitting this up into thirds, maybe going about 43, 44 laps each. I don't really see a lot of drivers willing to take that risk here at Dover, especially with how slow you have to get down to pit road speed here and how long the pit entrance is here, how difficult it is to make a green flag pit stop. This is probably one of the toughest places on the iRacing oval service to make a green flag pit stop because those barrels and the banking change is so significant. So I think you're going to see a lot of these drivers run it out to what would be about lap 105, 106-ish is I think where you're going to see a lot of these guys come down pit road if we don't get a yellow flag and ride this thing out for a little bit.
Taking a look on board, Brian LaPrade up to 14th position. Lost 1 spot from the drop of the green flag, but slowly dropping back a little bit. It's been a struggle for some of the Burton Klugerman Esports affiliated drivers. Brian LaPrade working with Lockdown Racing specifically as well, starting to just lose touch to some of the Nexus trucks just in front of him.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just how Dover goes. I mean, it's so easy to burn off your tires. It's so easy to push the truck just a little bit too hard one lap, and then you can give up almost a half a second the next lap because the tires get hot. I mean, it's just so difficult here to maintain consistency around this track by how difficult it is as we see the shot down the front straightaway just diving off of a cliff into the corners. And, I mean, that just does so much wear on the right side tires trying to hold that car in place on the track. And, unless you're one of the best at saving tires. Unfortunately, you're not going to be up front here at the end of the race as with the tire rule.
See right there, Garrett Maines able to make the pass in the Elliott Sauer Esports machine. One of the drivers who are competing in Road to Pro, Blake, but also just finished competing in the summer shootout. Showed some good performance in his legend car at Charlotte Motor Speedway at the Legends Oval for the past month or so.
It has, and it's been, that's something that's just really interesting to hop out of a real life race car. You take all the stress that you have to do with that and then hop right over to the sim and, kind of flip your mindset and get working on what you've been spending the past 2 weeks testing on. But nevertheless, this is a rebound run right here for Garrett Maines, who hasn't seen the luck or quite the speed that I think he's wanted. But now this new affiliation with Elliott Sadler Esports seems to be working out, and Maines is starting to get up into the top 10. Started back in 21st, already up to 9th, and looking like he may have that speed to try to get around Adam Gilliland.
Yeah, closed in about half a truck length in the corner exit of turn 2. This is one of his better tracks in various different types of machines in the NASCAR stock cars. Good run off of turn 4. Here comes the peak to Gilliland. Will Gilliland give him the space? Yes. Move Garrett Maines up to P8 this time. And talking about real-world experience as well, just so happens to be affiliated with this man, Derek Justice. One of the drivers who works with the North Force Group, Ricky, we talked about this pre-race, is Carson Hocevar, the first driver out with drops inside the top 25 of the points entering tonight. He just competed in the Slayer Nationals for qualifying that just got rained out for his feature race tonight. Not a part of tonight's competition.
Yeah, Carson, he needs good runs, but where he sits in the points right now, I think he's pretty safe to maybe miss a race. I'm biting my tongue as I say that and knocking on wood that it doesn't knock him out of the points, but it's so difficult, and you can never truly grasp how hard it is to have a real-life racing career like Carson Hocevar, of course, with his starts in the Truck Series, and then, of course, his late model racing, how difficult it is to balance something like running for pro on the iRacing sim and running in real life, because they both just take astronomical amounts of time and effort put into them, and really you can't choose between one, because one is your passion in real life, and the sim racing is just an extension of that passion.
Absolutely. And he's been someone, mind you, too, that has been a driving force for the short track race community as well in iRacing. Following on board, this is Brian Blackford in P25. He was one of 8 drivers who didn't have an incident point at Dover in 2019 in Road to Pro. Not been the best of runs so far for the Ford F-150 rather, of Brian Blackford.
Well, it hasn't been, and this has kind of been the case for, he and his pair at Slip Angle Motorsports and Casey Tucker, that it just seems as though they'll start in the back of the field, slowly work their way up. I feel like, again, I say it every week, but we really get to say it every week. Casey Tucker started 33rd and up to 23rd after not pulling in time in qualifying, but this has just kind of been the strategy that Blackford has played out, that if you can get these decent and solid finishes, it's not so much the good finishes that help you, it's just not having bad finishes. And of course, we know Dover can go awry in a very instant. So Blackford slowly trying to make his way up through the field, as now he has a side-by-side battle with Martinez. And it looks like Blackford almost going to surrender it as he does. And Martinez goes by for position number 25.
So Martinez slipping and sliding back in the 34 truck. And remember, he started up inside the top 10, but here's the tricky part when it comes to that orange and black machine you're referring to. Does have significant back end damage. You see that hit to the back end right there from some of the contact earlier on. Has been losing about a couple tenths of a second of lap last time by Martinez. 24 flat. Just trying to hold off Michael Fenlison along with Boyd Hogan, who are closing in quickly.
Yeah, and it's almost the Sharks behind him there as they go too wide. I bet he loves to see that, as he's going to try and pull a little bit of time on them, but that's so scary, if you could call it that, when you've kind of gone through your tires and you've used up almost all the life they have in them, and you just have a lot of hungry drivers behind you just chasing you down, trying to get that spot from you.
Several drivers we mentioned trying to keep nice and calm at the back of the field. Blake Neer works with Alex McCollum in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and that respective side has been trying to keep it clean to the back of the field. Seth the Merchant was also in that grouping. Jordan Lopez also in that grouping. He's actually dropped 10 seconds back from the race lead and 3 seconds back to the next truck, going only 140 miles an hour in the corners, Blake.
I think that's by design. I know Seth the Merchant, one of the Horizon team drivers as well, also pulled off on lap 1 to get behind this field and kind of ride things out. And obviously Donovan Strauss, who's been working with Horizon since the beginning of the season, he went up, he qualified, but it didn't seem like it was going as well for Strauss as he would have liked, as he started 16th and had fallen all the way back to 23rd before he had that contact with Daniel Roper. So perhaps Horizon, maybe they just think they missed the mark tonight and not really prepared for this cold weather, which again, I hate to stress this, to our viewers as much as it is, but having this very cool temperature on July 7th on the in-sim calendar is very, very strange and not probably akin to what many of these drivers thought they were going to see in race conditions tonight. And Justin, I'll have you pick up on this because you know how big of a difference that makes in tire wear. A lot of these drivers who thought, 30, 40 laps into this thing that they would be particularly fast. Well, you cool down the track that much, you're taking all that tire wear away, and that's going to hurt the teams that thought they had that long run speed.
Absolutely can agree with you at this point. Mind you, the Nexus machines have stayed in a choo-choo train. Position change right behind him. You've seen a little bit on screen. Garrett Maines went side by side with several trucks. Now up to P7 after making a pass back on Adam Gillen, along with Femi Olan and Derek Justice in that grouping. So several trucks still cycling out here. That, though, is separated now back to 2-3 groupings again. Isaac Gann currently in his own island, just about 4 truck lengths up from Maines.
Yeah, as the field is starting to separate into its own little packs, I guess you could say, with the front 5 trucks starting to pull away from the rest of the field, and then a single truck, then the rest of the field. It's kind of grouped up like that. One thing that I do want to ask Michael real quick, we haven't had him in here in a second, is how much does damage really affect these trucks? I mean, we talk about it so often, but really give us a kind of encompass of how bad just barely scraping the wall or getting a significant amount of damage on the right side or even front or back of the truck is.
It really depends on the severity of the hit. If it's like a little side-by-side contact, usually from another truck, it doesn't really harm anything, just a minor cosmetic damage, whether it be on the quarter panel or such. But if you slap the wall pretty hard with your right side, you can easily knock the camber and till out of the right front, essentially destroying all the setup work you put into it on your right front. But in the case of these Gander RV and Outdoors trucks, they can really take a beating. As you can see, Mitchell DeJong has all that front end damage still on the front end of his VRS Toyota Tundra, and he's still in P11. So I mean, these trucks can take a beating, but any kind of damage isn't beneficial. But especially if you hit here really hard on the outside wall, usually on the exits of these corners where they narrow up, you can easily tear off your right front for the rest of the race.
Absolutely. It's been so crucial to try and keep these trucks clean throughout the night so far. Justice, though, he's side by side, trying to also hold off DeJohn. It's Femi Olan giving the squeeze. Along the outside, not able to make the pass. That was for 9th spot. Coming 100 and go this time by. And as we've seen every race so far, Blake, Derek Justice, especially when it comes to a track around a mile or so or more in size, has been strong the longer the run has gone.
He has, and I'm also looking at one of his teammates up here, Isaac Gann, who I figured, this is about that time of the run where these Norris Force drivers really start to shine. But right now, Gann losing a little bit of time to that front, probably 5 truck pack that's at the front of the field right now, not necessarily gaining the time. He's actually going to lose 5th right now. Garrett Maines is on the march, and he has a lot of speed in that blue and red machine as he makes a power move by Isaac Gann. He'll move up into the top 5. A little bit of damage on the front nose of Garrett Maines, but it's obviously not slowing down his Toyota, as now it looks like a couple of drivers are starting to make their way forward that have that long run speed.
We'll take a quick side-by-side. When we come back, more coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. Live on Podium Esports. You're watching Round 9 from Dover International Speedway. Welcome back, everyone, to Dover International Speedway for more coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. It's round number 9. Approaching the start of lap 76 this time by 95 to go. Justin Prince alongside Blake McCann, Ricky Spreer, Michael Grulia also joining us as a guest analyst for tonight's race. Ryan Bauer in the director's seat for tonight's action. One of the longest runs of the race so far, just one caution flag so far, Blake. Very clean, surprisingly. Not too much contact from many of these drivers tonight outside of a couple scrapes here and there.
It's been a relatively clean race here at Dover, and I think, the added grip, the cooler temperatures has kind of helped with that. You're not sliding as much, you're not getting as much tire wear, and particularly here at Dover, one thing that will often get drivers is when they get tight on exit, getting into the outside wall. You've barely seen any of that up to this point as far as we've gotten in these runs, and again, I think it just goes back to that the temperatures that we're at. We're still 67 ambient temperature, only 111 on the track temp. So these guys in very cool conditions. It's allowing them to be really, really fast, but obviously is helping the grip as well.
Now, one thing to note, you see Steven Wilson now up to P2. One of the drivers looking to become dual series athletes in eNASCAR and the World of Outlaws with the late model, Steven Wilson. He's quietly clawed his way past Matheson and Honeycutt. That truck starting to find some pace towards the midway portion of this run, Ricky.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just two completely different types of racing and two completely different disciplines of motorsports. I mean, everybody tries to clump motorsports into the same basket, but when you go from running something like a dirt late model, running 70 degrees sideways through a corner to an asphalt car where even the slightest little hiccup can put you in a wall and you really don't have a whole lot of room for error. It's just two completely different disciplines, and it's cool to see that he has the speed in not only one but two different areas of motorsports.
And plenty drivers too, Blake. Both you and Michael are starting to notice this a little bit, are starting to be able to actually arc it down a little bit more in some of these corners and be able to still hook the bottom, mind you. A lot more double apexing that we normally see in some cases here at Dover starting to factor in.
Well, and I was wondering when we were going to see this in a run. I talked with a couple of drivers before the race, and you can ride on board. You see right there that total advantage machine right there. Takes it up a little bit higher than running right along the bottom side of the racetrack in Allen Bowes. And we were wondering when we were going to see this. I think with the cooler temperatures, you're not quite having to deal with as much and trying to save your right rear, because that's the threat when you run too low here and try to keep it right on the apron. But now these guys are starting to track up a little bit and kind of diamond that corner a little bit more, as you see once again. And now you even see Caden Honeycutt kind of stealing that line away from Bowes right there.
Now keep in mind, Caden Honeycutt, we discussed it a little bit, driver in the ARCA Menard series who runs a lot on the short tracks in the past couple years or so. So this is his specialty. These types of racetracks here, as the Friends of Jacqueline Foundation machine still able to hold on to the top 4. We still talk about bigger movers and big movers throughout this entire field. Garrett Maines slowly clawing in this top 4 and top 5 grouping, by the way, running the 24.8s along with the leaders.
Yeah, Garrett Maines is just trying to stay consistent. He's had a lot of good runs throughout the Road to Pro series this year in 2020, and he's had that consistency factor that a lot of drivers lack in this series, is that he's able to run inside the top 10, the top 20 consistently. And right now in the 6th spot, I mean, he's looking towards a top 5 finish here tonight, which would greatly help him in the points. I mean, not saying he needs it, as he's pretty well set in the points at this point, but everybody's looking for that solid points day. And fortunately for Garrett Maines, he's had a lot of those. He's had a couple little hiccups throughout 2020, but has mostly stayed consistent.
Couple updates, one involving Garrett Maines, the Elliott Sauer Esports team reaching out and saying cosmetic damage only on Maines' truck. Rest of the truck completely fine at the moment in the 1. Also hearing from Allen Bowes from Total Advantage Motorsport that the bigger arc is in part because that machine is getting tight at the halfway point of the race. Getting to the end of lap 86, 84 laps to go this time by, And as we've crossed the halfway point of tonight's race, it's time to bring you the iRacing Midway Race Break. Brought to you by iRacing, the world's leading online simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. iRacing is home to a wide variety of officially sanctioned series, with racing from the Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Up at the front, it's Will Norton pulling away by 1 second over Steven Wilson, with Jake Matheson in P3. Caden Honeycutt rounds out the 1-2-1-3-4 for Nexus Esports so far, with Alan Bowes inside the top 5. Garrett Maines has chunked his way from P21 up to P6, with Isaac again in his top split debut of the season up to 7th. Mitchell Gion up to P number 8, with Derek Justice in 9th. Adam Gilwin Blake rounds out your top 10.
Watt completes it in 11th. 12th will be Michael Gonzalez. 13th is Zach Nichols. 14th, rebounding up through the field, is Brian Mercurio. 15th is Ryan Doucette after recovering pretty well from that speeding penalty. He's up inside the top 15. Anthony Burrows runs in 16th. Justin Lisenby in 17th. Drew Freenage in 18th. 19th is Alec Martinez, and rounding out the top 20, Michael is Jarrett Liebert.
Yeah, then 21st is Dylan Jones riding behind Lieber in the 21st spot. Casey Tucker in 22nd. Briar LaPrade kind of fell off there after starting 13th, now back to 23rd. Seth the Merchant, we documented him falling to the back at the start of the race, back in 24th. Braden Bullios in 25th. Michael Finless in 26th. 27th is Brian Blackford. 28th is Boyd Hogan. And Blake Neer is 29th, last car in the lead lap. All these drivers are multiple laps down with from here on out. Jacob Hall in 30th, 9 laps down. Jordy Lopez Jr. 31st. Donovan Strauss and Daniel Roper 32nd and 33rd. We documented them with their only caution of the day. And then Trayton Lapsevich, who did not make the start, is going to be the last truck in the field in 34th.
And as the pit window opens, this concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, with over 170,000 drivers on the service and more than 80 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from. iRacing is the original esports racing game. For more information, visit iRacing.com today. And we talked about it a little bit, Michael, during one of the side-by-sides. We expected drivers to try and split around lap 65. We've now reached that ballpark as we're around 57 laps now into the run.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an awkward time to pit. It's on the verge of being able to make it on one stop from here to the end. I don't think they'll be able to do it, as we have 77 laps to go as they cross the stripe here. So I don't know if we have enough time to make it to the end with Blake Neer on the pit lane for service. Actually, he might be in a worse situation because he's on there for multiple laps. But yeah, I should be expecting everybody here within the next few laps, probably around lap 100 to lap 110. You're probably looking at lap 110 as the very limit on fuel, but expect drivers around there.
Of note, Blake Neer has jumped out of the truck. Jody Lopez Jr. also a DNF on the night after he pulled off the racetrack. He was losing a few tenths a lap. 75 laps to go this time by, though. In the fuel window, expecting many drivers around the 100 to 110 mark. And the undercut may be very powerful here, Blake, because the fall off in this run already more than 2 seconds for some of these trucks.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, Justin, that even though you can come down pit road, and at that point, it's just a really difficult strategy gamble. You're obviously looking at that point to hopefully catch a caution while you're out front and use those fresher tires to gain track position. But I think we're more likely going to see some drivers who maybe try to stretch this an entire fuel can. Maybe some of the drivers that are running in the back and really have nothing to lose. Guys like Seth the Merchant, Briar LaPrade, perhaps Brian Blackford, who may not have the long run speed that they wanted to showcase right here. This could be an opportunity for them to maybe go about, anywhere from 8 to 10 laps past where these guys would split it in half. And again, because of how slow pit road is here, you'd be able to trap those trucks a lap down and you'd be in control of the race. So I think we're more than likely going to see that than guys shortcutting it, because then you're really putting yourself in about a 5 or 10 lap window where you need a caution for that strategy to work out.
Fastest truck on the track, though, for Lowline Racing, it's Brian Mercurio. And for the past couple weeks, their Cup Series program has also been in the same ballpark, where they've been very quick at Pocono, very quick at the Brickyard for the full distance NIS events. That truck carrying some of that speed over now, Ricky, into the Road to Pro competition tonight.
Yeah, and that just goes to show, you know, what kind of way that the teams will set up their truck differently than others. Of course, his truck running some of the fastest times on track right now, 20-odd some laps into a run here. And, I mean, that's the kind of speed that you want in a race like this at Dover when you do have these long green flag runs. And I'm sure that they set up that truck for green flag pit stops and then for the race to go green from there. But you see it all throughout the field. Some of the guys that have the shorter run speed that will be up front early and then fall back on a run. But really, you have to be so well versed in building setups for these things to set up a truck for a long run at a track that you know statistically will keep going on a long run versus a track like Martinsville, where you can expect a lot of cautions from just a whole lot of contact at that track, and you need the short run speed out of a truck for that.
Field window is open, and Blake, you also know that machine that is flying in Brian Mercurio through the field. He also just so happens to be in the top 5 in both the non-drop and drop points, by the way.
Exactly, Justin. The thing is, I think there's a lot of people who hear that name and they're thinking, who is Brian Mercurio? He's somebody that obviously has been around the sim racing community for a little bit, ran a lot of racing with him at a couple of private leagues at FTF for the last couple of years. And he is a name that people are going to start to recognize here very shortly. As you mentioned, up in the top 5 in points with 1 drop and 3rd without a drop. So he's been running in second split for the majority of this season, but you even see that number on your screen. He is the number 4 car in this split, and that is not a shocker. So Mercurio, somebody who started 22nd but is doing it in perfect Brian Mercurio fashion, slowly working his way up through the field and going to get a solid points finish. That's how he's gotten to this point.
Pit calls are open. Zach Nichols just ducked down this time by. Last time by, the fellow low-line teammate and Andrew Freenosh missed his pit lane cue, so he's now had to come a second time around. Several leaders are now expected to come down this time. Everyone ready to dart on down this time, Ricky.
Yeah, as I'm looking right now at Ryan Doucette, off the topic of pit strategy just for a second, Ryan Doucette, after his bad pit stop last time in the speeding penalty, has gotten up to the 12th position, and I believe that he's going to try and stretch out this run and maybe jump over some people here.
Yeah, he had got to around 7th spot, give or take, when the pit stops ran. Check that P12. Had just got through some of the traffic, and several trucks near contact, nearly tapping the back end. The Yun and Garrett Maines just barely missed those barrels as Casey Tucker nearly says hello to them.
I think we may need to just keep this camera on here to see. Again, you get to really see how difficult it is to pit, not only to navigate with the traffic and communicate around you, but how easy it is to overshoot it and get into those barrels. We see Justice. He does a good, nice, solid job right there. Skids it and locks it up near pit road. He may have been too fast speeding. We'll have to see that other time by, but man, this pit road, out of all of them, and Michael, you can even talk about this, is probably the most difficult around the NASCAR service or NASCAR schedule to get on the pit road under green flag stops.
Yeah, indeed. This is one of the trickiest pit lanes to come down at speed, because once you come down to the turn 3, we got a caution here to shake things up mid-cycle. It's Isaac Gann, who's in the middle of turn 3. He just wrecked.
Wow. He had just called. He was coming down and looked like he wanted to come, but had a fresher tire truck right beneath him. Zach Nichols also had Adam Gilliland charging underneath, and bam, contact to the left rear brings us under caution, and this race just got flipped upside down.
Well, I'll tell you what, he posted in the chat 3 different times, pitting in, and it was Adam Gilliland who came by and smashed him in the rear as he was trying to get down to the bottom of the racetrack. You see Gilliland, it's just so hard in that situation when you have that many fresher tires, and you know, he thought he gave plenty of warning to them that, hey, I'm coming down pit road. I said it in chat, I typed it out 3 times, and you can imagine they're not very happy campers, Isaac Gann and Adam Gilliland right now.
Here's the view with Adam Gilliland for the full lap from the roof cam. And Michael, the communication was there, but it's also at the same time tricky when he's trying to plan out his own strategy too while making sure he doesn't lose spots. Mind you, Nichols just drove right on by that lap and was trying to take advantage before the pit call.
Yeah, I mean, as you saw right there in the replay, it's difficult to pit from where he's trying to pit from. He's in the second lane and he's trying to cut down in front of Gillen. I know he made the pit call before, but it's still it's really difficult to fit your car or truck in that little gap that he had right there in front of Gillen's, and Gillen had nowhere to go. As you guys see, the truck's now down pit lane for the rest of the cycle to finish out. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it gets really claustrophobic when you guys try to start pitting during the cycles. It's really difficult to even get down to the pit lane, let alone do it around other trucks.
So that will mean most of the field now down to 2 tire sets left. Pinned a lap down, Casey Tucker, Zach Nichols, Jarrett Liebert, Michael Finlayson, Andrew Freenosh, Derek Justice amongst those drivers. First man off the pit lane, though, is Will Norden.
Yeah, and that's not surprising after the great stop he had the last round of pit stops. He just seems to be so good getting in and out of that box in a timely fashion. And it's so difficult to stay on that edge there, as it's so easy to just slide through your box, especially on a track like Dover with the concrete, of course, asphalt on the pit road. But nevertheless, it's just so easy to slide through your box there. And also, it's easy to stop early. We see a lot of guys, they'll get into the brakes and then have to let off. I mean, it's more difficult than it shows to get into the pit box a perfect way and at the right orientation for your truck, for the crew to get the work done that they need to.
You've seen the penalty there for Derek Justice, was caught speeding on the pit entry. And when you're caught speeding under green flag conditions, it's a 40-second stop and hold. He's now several laps down as a result. And the thought process here, too, going back to you towards this on Blake, too, with the caution flag, it's similar to what we've seen with Garrett Maines. He had called to pit before he had a truck come below him. The thing is, Maines waited. Gann did not in that case.
It's one of those things you have to know when to get down on the pit road, and I mean that's a tough spot for Adam Gilliland as well. He's not anticipating that, you know, if Gann's running a little bit higher off the bottom side of the racetrack, if he's going to try and cut down and make pit road. I mean, you see the call, so I mean it's just one of those things. If you're Gilliland, you're going to claim, why are you on the high side? If you're Gann, you're going to say, well, I told everybody I was pitting 3 times. So you know, it's just one of those things that I don't think those drivers are ever going to agree on exactly what happened right there. And, you know, that's just unfortunate that it brings out a caution in the worst possible time for some of these drivers. You mentioned you go a lap down here at Dover with how long the pit is. Obviously, Derek Justice went 2 laps down. He'll get 1 back on the wave around here. But this is really going to flip this race in a pretty big way, because we talked about you get these cautions in the last quarter of the race, and they have turned into chaos. And Dover, it's definitely a good track for that to happen.
By the way, at the time of the caution flag, Blake nearly mentioned parked the truck. As soon as the caution came out, started rolling, he's now 18 laps down in P number 30, so there's a chance if there's cautions, precautions, might be able to gain some of the positions back from parking his 14 machine. But 2 to go signal this time, several wave arounds, and the strategy just kind of got flipped upside down here, because now this is the scary part. It's not been tested in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series yet, but maybe at New Hampshire, for example, with the tire limits, it's about to be potentially on show tonight here at Dover if there's cautions, precautions, and then you have people staying out to keep a set.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, the tire rule, it makes things difficult. It adds that extra part of racing that we see in real life, not as much in the Cup Series, but more in the Xfinity Series and the Gator Outdoor Truck Series. Tires and how big of a factor that plays when more cautions come out. People are going to want to duck down pit road. They're going to want to get the fresh rubber. We were talking on a long run, almost 2 seconds of fall off, or I'm sorry, is 2 seconds of fall off and even more. I mean, if you are on a 10-lap run and you can even gain a half a second a lap, you're going to want to come down. You're going to want to get some new shoes on the car. So I think that these drivers are going to use every single one of those sets, but also it's going to go off of if the leader pits. We could have a strategy call where somebody stays out, or more than half the field stays out, and somebody goes down pit road. It's just so many variables that we can see here towards the end of the race.
And for those to clarify, of course, tire limit did come into place for Indianapolis. However, with the long green flag runs at the Brickyard, did not become a factor, with several drivers having several sets remaining at the end of that race. But these drivers getting ready to get back underway with 57 laps to go. Will Norton in control of the field. Steven Wilson in second. Bose, Matheson, Honeycutt the top 5. Mercurial up to 6th spot with the time of the caution. Martinez back to 7th after dropping to the back end of the top 20. Amongst the rest of the drivers inside the top 10, Lisenby, Burrows, and Seth DeMerchant. Pace car is off, and this time Norton bunching up. Green flags out, back underway from Dover.
And as they get back underway, this is where it's going to get aggressive. A lot of that single file sorting out that you saw early on, I think, is well out the window at this point of the juncture. As we get off of turn 2, they're still side by side for the race lead. Total advantage, and Nexus Esports going at it here for the lead.
Hard send from Wilson, gives the squeeze this time. Norton, can he stick on the bottom side? No. New race leader, Steven Wilson to the point for the first time tonight. Matheson up to 3rd, Bose to 4th. Honeycutt shuffled to P5 after the jump.
And Jake Matheson's going to try and close that gap there and get back into the 2nd spot, as he's going to try and pass Will Norton. But he wants to be in that 2nd spot. He wants to be in the catbird seat and in the position to stay up front here and maybe make a move to win the race later on.
Falling on board, this is Matheson in P3. We've seen him control the field much of the early part of the race before the first caution. Will Norton controlled the race in the 2nd stint. Now, it's the question, though, of can Steven Wilson keep control of the field through the 3rd stanza of this race in green flag conditions?
Well, while the Wilson was more than capable of running up through a couple of trucks and getting right up to Will Norton. So I think this is going to be a track position game for Will Norton right now, or for Steven Wilson rather, as he'll try to hang on to this lead. I think his truck and some of the total advantage trucks have had a lot of speed up here in the top 5 tonight. So I really do think that the rest of this field is in trouble, that Wilson can likely hang on to his track position here, especially because we're not going to get a 70-lap run to the end here. That's out the window. We only have about 53 laps to go as it stands right now, so we're not going quite as long into this run as we have in some of our previous runs.
We've talked about Bose having some tightness earlier on in this race during the longest green flag run. His Ford F-150 already losing touch to the top 3 once again. Last time by was a bit quicker than Matheson, but in terms of the interval, has already lost nearly 3/4 tenths to the trucks in front.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going to have to figure something out with the tightness in that truck, whether it's already coming into play or they made a bad adjustment that last pit stop. But that's going to kill him here, especially at a place like Dover and the way the wall comes out and bites you. They call it the Monster Mile for a reason. This track will attack you and have no remorse about it. So he's going to need to get the tightness out of that truck, and he's going to need to do it fast, because if he continues that way, he could blow a tire if he stays out there too long and tries to force it, or he could just end up destroying the wall and ending his night.
Over the radio, a loud Caden Honeycutt on by. As he was holding up the Nexus Esports machine. Behind him, it's low line Nexus. Isaac again with North Force, then Lockdown, followed by Slip Angle inside the choo-choo train. Brian Blackford, we talked about the strategy, Blake, of him keeping the truck clean. He's done that. He's quietly now up to 11th spot, one of his best runs of the entire season.
Well, and this was one of those things where if you're running back there in the pack, you really had nothing to lose by, hoping that these guys would have trouble on green flag pit stops. And of course at Dover, it's just one of those tracks where it's very likely to happen, whether somebody gets loose, hits the barrels. It is not too uncommon to see sim racers struggle to get on a pit road here. So a lot of these guys really had nothing to lose. Briar LaPrade is now running up inside the top 10 after struggling a little bit with his machine. So a lot of these guys that really had nothing to lose, they just decided to take a little bit of a gamble. They weren't going to lose any spots while doing it, but now they have this great track position and they're able to hang on and see if, there's some chaos at the end of this thing, they could go up there and maybe snatch the top 5.
Looking on board with the Ledford Billiard Supply, already a bit of damage to the right side. That truck's been wheeling fairly well despite that. Just still can't get along by. Got held up a bit by Anthony Burrows, who Mind you, we talked about some drivers moving up from second and third splits up to top split for tonight. Was one of those competitors. Martinez also in that grouping. Total Advantage also having a snare driver moving up in that said grouping as well. That's quietly been inside the top 20 and Michael Gonzalez. Several drivers have now started to push as some of the Air Championship runs have gone to the wayside so far.
Yeah, and I mean, it's how the dice rolls. It's how the season plays out. It's how everybody does in the races. And I mean, one person could have a good finish that didn't have a good finish last week, and they could jump so many people in the points. It's just the way everything goes, especially with the drop race. And if you're not familiar with how that works, pretty much the worst finish of a driver, they get to drop that one race throughout the whole entire schedule. So when you hear us speaking about a drop race point standings and as well as the regular point standings, that's what we're referring to. But I mean, it's just so difficult to calculate the points, especially if a driver in front of you has a good race and then a bad race, because you don't know if they're going to have one worse later on in the season.
43 laps to go this time. Top three have now pulled away by more than a second. Steven Wilson, Will Norton, Jake Mathis in the top three. And this is important, mind you, for Will Norton, because he talked about it during the post-race interview after Darlington. After having a ton of bad luck at the Roval in a few of the earlier races, that win was a huge relief for him. He's still mathematically within range to try and move up to the top 20 if he can push like he's been doing in the next final few races.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And you think about just the huge bump you get out of winning or finishing in the top three of these races. You're talking about nearly 400 points that you're going to gain when you're looking at about 250, 260 a week. So for somebody that is outside that cutoff by what was it, with no drops, it was about 180 points that Will Norton was looking to make up. These types of runs are what is going to set him apart and get him back into it. As the caution flag flies, more trouble here. It is Casey Tucker who is sitting here in the middle of the tri-oval right now after, I believe it was some contact. It was Derek Justice and Boyd Hogan that got together, and Tucker, unfortunately, got the worst end of it.
And that's going to lead to some discussions, to say the very least. Justice on the bottom side, Hogan on the top side in 3 and 4. And Justice pushed up the track. Hogan slammed to the wall. No for Tucker to go there, Ricky.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I was talking about in the pre-race show, is somebody gets into the wall here and the track is just so tight and the trucks are pushing off of the corner just up towards that wall, that when contact's made with one truck in front of you or beside you into the wall, they're going to bounce off, and there's really nowhere for you to go carrying this much speed here.
Your take on that, Michael? Keep in mind, Justice was a lap down in 23rd.
Yeah, in that situation, he's just trying to battle for the lucky dog in that situation with Ryan Doucette. But yeah, it's just Ricky mentioned it perfectly. As soon as you come off these corners and the bottom truck gets tight underneath another, it just pushes them straight up into the wall, and they're more likely going to make contact in that scenario. So it's just a product of Dover racing, especially as you mentioned earlier, Justin, with the safer barrier being added recently.
Everyone down the pit lane who is on the lead lap. And now the strategy gets very intriguing for these drivers. If they all take 4, it leaves 1, just 1 set remaining on the call, Michael, which this could get intriguing if we get a yellow flag, say, after 10, 15 laps.
Oh, for sure. I definitely believe we're going to have different strategies to see Steven Wilson win the race off pit road, just barely edging Will Norton. But it's going to be definitely interesting to see how we're going to go for the end of the race here. We're working lap 132 of 170, and if we have another caution within the next 10 laps, I expect everyone to stay out and preserve that set of tires, because more than likely, as you said before, cautions definitely breed cautions.
Ryan Doucette did get the lucky dog. That's why he's let some of the leaders on by. So that means now about 20 or so trucks are on said lead laps. Several, though, have also elected to take the wave around with this caution flag to try and get themselves back into the window. With this opportunity, I'd like to remind you of some of this week's events coming up, including tomorrow night. It's the Cars Esports Tour back in action at Myrtle Beach Speedway. That'll take place on July the 8th, starts at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Then next Monday, it's the new Scan of Kentucky showcase for the Sim 500 Trans Service Cup Series. That also takes place at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. Then, on Tuesday, July the 14th, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series says hello to New Hampshire. Short track racing will take place on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube feeds. 9 p.m. Eastern Time is the start of that broadcast. And as these drivers line up behind the pace car, want to get your take, Michael, on how your preparation's been so far to go back to short track racing at New Hampshire.
My preparation has started a lot earlier than I normally do. New Hampshire is definitely not one of my best tracks. I really struggle there, so I've had to put a lot of practice in. I've already put in a few hundred laps there, just trying to make sure I get the setup dialed in and do a few laps to get some practice in. But yeah, it's just one of those tracks where I just need to have a lot of practice in, make sure I get better, and keep these consistent runs in that I've been putting in, especially coming off our decent finish there at Indy at P15.
Just so happens to match your car number, in fact, with that good run.
Yeah.
By the way, here's something to chew on as well. Keep in mind all the wave-around trucks, yes, they're going to be on older tires here, Ricky, but they're also going to have the advantage of an extra set. So, say they get the quick yellow, after, say, only 10-15 laps, keep the lead lap in that mark, they have a potential advantage if it goes green from that point on, and many trucks don't pit as a result.
Yeah, but the only issue, and we've spoke about it so much on the broadcast today, I feel like it's wearing out its meaning, but track position is just so important here at Dover. We talked about how skinny the track is, and that's the reason why it's so important is even with newer tires, you could have 20-lap newer tires, and if guys are 2 to 3 wide in front of you, there's no moves to be made on the track because there's no room. So I think that it could be an advantage, but some of these guys that just got the wave around are going to have to gain some positions up and at least be within striking distance of the top 10 before they can make a strategy call like that and have a huge gain out of it.
So the wave around trucks in this caution are Derek Justice, Jarrett Liebert, Andrew Freenosh, Michael Finlayson, all to get back on the lead lap. One truck is also 1 lap down but not able to take the wave as they're behind the lead trucks and Zach Nichols. All these trucks all set to get the 1-to-go signal this time by is the expectation. The top 10, Stephen Wilson, Will Norton, Jake Matheson, Alan Bowes, Brian Mercurio into the top 5, Caden Honeycutt to 6, Martinez, Burrows, Lisenby, Gonzalez now rounds out the top 10. And don't forget about Breyer LaPrade. Patriot Breyer is in P11, Gann after his cautions in 12th, and Brian Blackford with one of the cleanest trucks in the field, still blank, is in P13.
Going to be, you have a handful of drivers. You have about 8 or so more, including the Merchant, De Jong, Gilliland, Jones, Ola, Buyos, Maines that are on everybody's strategy. But this is really going to be interesting. How aggressive do these drivers get? And if we get a caution in about 10 or so laps, then, does everybody pit? Who stays out? Maybe gambles that another caution would give them fresh tires because they're so important. This race just blew wide open with that caution. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And, we'll see if Monster is going to eat some more trucks tonight.
Miles the Monster has been very aggressive on some of these trucks tonight, and the tempers have flared with short track racing. 35 laps to go this time. The track's starting to cool. The tempers heat up. Stephen Wilson brings them back to the green flag. We're back underway.
And again, they work side by side. No more getting in a single file train in this one unless you're Stephen Wilson, who's able to check away from the rest of the field. They're side by side for second. They sort that out between Matheson and Norton. But how about it? Brian Mercurio looking for fourth on the inside of Alan Bowes.
Bowes trying to wheel it on the top side. Just gets clear. But the tricky thing with that start, Ricky, a lot of drivers bunched up. Drivers now trying to break out of the bunches with Caden Honeycutt wanting his top 5 back.
Yeah, Caden Honeycutt going to the bottom of that 41 machine you see on the top side, and this is when it gets difficult late here into a run. You're trying to make moves, you're trying to do it, but it pushes up to the wall. You don't want to get into the guy on the outside. Is the 41 truck now going to be the odd man out? He's going to be stuck on the outside. I believe that's Mercurio. He's going to be stuck on the outside, and he has a whole list of trucks on the bottom. They're trying to get by him.
And Lisenby's been stuck on the top side in every single restart, it seems, tonight. The 31 truck now on the aggressive makes the pass, and Mercurio now getting freight trained. Lisenby now up to P7 on the mark. By the way, we'd like to thank the Dusty Sliders 5 for subscription with Twitch Prime to Podium Esports. Some of Dusty slide jobs starting to be made now by some of these trucks, Blake.
Oh, no doubt about it. And again, you mentioned Mercurio, who was just up here battling for fourth and is not finding the speed on the high side that he perhaps wanted. Maybe he elected to take 2 tires, not sure, but there's just something definitely gone amiss on that low-line racing machine that he's not showcasing the speed we were accustomed to seeing out of his Toyota as Isaac Gann made his way by for P11.
Every truck did take 4 tires, so everyone who came down that caution flag, 1 set remaining. But here's again the importance of staying on the bottom line, especially on the restarts. Mercurio now shuffled from 5th back to P12. Michael, as a driver, how frustrating can that be knowing you've got a good truck, but then lose all the positions by losing that preferred line?
Yeah, it's really difficult restarting on the outside here at Dover. As you know, it's a very narrow track, especially on the exit. So once you're up there, it's just a matter of hanging on, looking in the rearview mirror, trying to figure out where your gap is, where you can shuffle down into the bottom lane, as you see Lisenby did right in front of Briar LaPrade for the 7th spot. But yeah, it's just a matter of patience, holding on to your truck and making sure you have enough room to stay off that wall and stay off the truck to your inside.
Taking a look at that grouping, losing a bit of time. That's Alec Martinez, who is trying to stay around that top 20 bubble, has floated around their whip drops throughout the season, the past 3 or so rounds, and really wanting to hold on in that orange machine. Just hasn't had the pace, though, compared to some of his teammates, Blake, on the mid-run, it seems, in that machine.
You're right. That mid-run speed has just been a little bit different it's just different when you think about how all these setups work, how all these teams work together, that, you know, it is interesting that you can have these drivers who all pretty much run on the exact same setup, and yet there are still just many different outcomes, which we're going to take you on board here with Garrett Maines. Obviously, his truck is a little bit damaged, but you look at the RPMs on your screen, look how that sinks right here. He's clutching, and I'm not exactly sure what the benefit of that is, because everybody can make it on fuel. If maybe he's just trying to keep the truck from overheating potentially and trying to cool it down to where it won't blow because of some of the damage he had. But I just thought I was really curious. He came by the booth here, and his truck was silent, and I was wondering why. But yeah, I guess either he's trying to make it on fuel, if maybe he took a wave around, but a little bit odd strategy back here with the damaged race truck of Garrett Maines.
I think it's more so the damage, because you've seen how heavy the damage is in the back end front of that truck. By the way, a thank you to Cameron Ledford, as the Ledford Billiard Supply machine is now getting freight trained from the bottom side by some of the Nexus and Total Advantage trucks. LaPrade up as high as the top 10 tonight. He's now stuck on the top side, as LaPrade trying to hold on for his sponsor.
Yeah, he's trying to hold on that top side, and it's only going to get worse as these tires get older. You can try and pinch the guys on the bottom, but then you run the risk of somebody sliding up into you, as it looks like he may get a chance there, but no, he's just hanging on for dear life right now, trying to find a gap anywhere and everywhere to the bottom side as he gets into the wall a little bit, and he's going to lose even more time on the top.
Tries to give a squeeze now to the 75 truck. Last time by scored in 9th, now stuck to 10th. Now Mitchell DeYoung joining the fun as well in the choo-choo train. Gann's right behind them as well. This is not good for LaPrade. No space to try and duck down, at the very least, all the way maybe between Mercurio and Brian Blackford, unless he buoys his way down or gets the help like that.
See, he was just able to find enough of an entrance there to get down to the bottom side, and you really talk about that's where a lot of these yellows come from late in these races, is drivers defending their track position. If they get just enough space, they're going to make that move and hope that it sticks, and obviously he was able to get down there. But I mean, LaPrade, if you really look all the way throughout this top 10, Briar LaPrade is the first driver, actually now Mitchell DeJong, as he goes by, he'll take hold of the top 10. He is the first driver that is not affiliated with Nexus Esports or Total Advantage Motorsports to be running in this field. All the top 9 are either Total Advantage or Nexus trucks.
Well, outside of Justin Lisenby and his Parker Kokeman Esports truck, but you can see Wilson has set sail a 1/10 of a second quicker a lap right now. 1.1 seconds already is the gap. As soon as Wilson got that clean air, that truck has found another gear. It's to the point where they're swapping for P2. Will Norton given the space by Jake Matheson right behind him.
Yeah, Jake Matheson going to look back down to the bottom. But, Justin, as you just brought up, a huge gap there that Steven Wilson has pulled out. And really, if we look back on it, that's the biggest gap we've seen between the front two drivers all race long. It's been within several car lengths for most of the race, as most of the Nexus trucks have rocked through the top five and stayed bumper to bumper. But now it's starting to spread out. And Jake Matheson, after getting passed for the second position, has fallen all the way to the fifth position after he just got passed by Caden Honeycutt.
Yeah, Lisenby hit the wall. This time, the 23 machine having a bit of trouble, now has a bit of a crush in right front after hard contact coming off a turn 4 that started it, then had a second bit of damage triggered onto it as well. You see how hard that contact is on the front fender now.
One of the hardest slams we've seen on corner exit tonight, and that's going to be some damage. We see a lot of trucks out here being able to manage damage, but I think anybody who's been a part of the iRacing knows that right front damage on a track that running anywhere about above 140 miles an hour, which of course you're doing here at Dover, it's going to hurt the aerodynamics, it's going to hurt the handling, it's going to make that truck tight. So watch for Lisenby here. He's going to be struggling with his Toyota to get to the end here with these last 16 laps.
Coming to 15 to go this time. Wilson now up to 1.6 seconds. And for the drivers who took a wave around, they need a caution in the next few moments because they are just 15 to 20 truck lengths up the road from Wilson before they are pinned a lap down once again. Amongst them, Justice, who was inside the top 10 before the contact. Jared Liebert amongst the other machines in this choo-choo train. This is 24th and 25th.
Yeah, and as the trucks get spread out here, I think these lap down trucks are starting to realize, or the guys that are coming to a lap down, that they might not get the caution that they were banking on, saving that extra set of tires and not coming down pit road. We spoke earlier about how that could be a strategy for those guys, but unfortunately, inside of 15 laps to go, I don't think that we're going to get that caution, as most of the field has very well spread out throughout the field.
Yeah, the spread amongst the top 10 now up to 5 seconds. About 14 laps to go, and a lot of communication, mind you, on the radio because there is now lap traffic mixed in with some of the leaders. You see that number 14 truck, that's Michael Finlayson, that is trying to move out of the way for some of the machines. He was 26th on the track. Many of the leaders are using him as a pick at the moment. That's allowed a bit of separation amongst some of the air groupings. That has increased now by an extra couple tenths as a result. Near contact, Martinez contact. Finlayson able to straighten it up, but that was contact as well with the yawn in the contact.
That was definitely a hard hit for De Jong there as he and Alec Martinez got a little bit together, and that's going to cost him a ton of time. Much more damage on that VRS Toyota than what he was dealing with earlier in the race. As we take a look at it here on the replay, it's just one of those cases where you see a pair of 18 trucks exiting the corner, and I guess the corner isn't big enough for two 18 trucks. De Jong goes into the wall as Martinez moves up. Very reminiscent of kind of what we saw between Derek Justice and Boyd Hogan just a little bit earlier. And unfortunately, again, another hard hit in the outside wall off the exit of 4. It's going to cost De Jong a couple of spots and a lot of horsepower in his machine.
So the Railroad Rallycross driver, as well as one of the top drivers in iRacing's championship on that side, now cycled to P9 with that damage. P8 switching with Anthony Burrows as a result in part with that damage. You see how significant it is on the right side and all the way up inside said safer barrier. Under 10 laps to go this time, though, up to 9 to go. Wilson up by 1.4 seconds in front of the rest of the field. Norton still losing a bit of time off and on, gained some time last time, but might need a caution to have a shot here, Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on what this lap traffic does. I mean, they're working through it right now. It looks to be somewhat of a clean track. I mean, but it just comes down to how well he can get through the traffic. I mean, it's a big deal at any track you go to, but not as big a deal as at the mile and a halfs or the cookie cutter tracks, as we like to call them, like Charlotte, Atlanta, and places like that. But at a place like Dover, where it's so tight and you really just have to almost predict where the lap car is going to go, because some of the guys hold their line and others will go to the top side. But, one thing I will say, and we'll look back here, is we have a battle for almost the third position here and inside the top 5 as Mr. Martinez looking to pass Jake Matheson for that 5th spot.
Yeah, you see that single followed out, but here's the scary part when it comes to Matheson. He has been scary loose off some of these corner exits, especially turn 4. Martinez has poked his nose a couple times, but whatever adjustment was made by Matheson for under that caution flag, it's stepping up that right rear a lot.
Certainly is. You can see the handling starting to go awry for Will Norton, or Jake Matheson rather, who, again, you think about how loose he is. Again, cool track, so you got to imagine he is thinking his lucky stars that we're not on a hotter racetrack right now. And Martinez going to make the move, look low on his Nexus Esports teammate, but there you see Martinez get a little bit loose on the bottom, so it's going to be Matheson able to hang on and hold him at bay.
Hard-fought battle amongst teammates. Oh, well, Wilson still sets sail. The gap evened out now, 1.1 seconds, under 5 to go, coming to 4 laps to go. And Wilson looking to come home with what would be another big victory for Total Advantage Motorsports. After being inside the top 5 the entire race, has led ever since he made that pass for the race lead during that longer green flag run, and with some of the strong pit stops under some of the caution flag periods tonight.
Yeah, and that first pit stop to put him in front of Jake Matheson on the track, or I'm sorry, that was Will Norton. But the strong pit stops are really what get you up front at a place like Dover. I mean, the slow pit speed, you have to make sure.
Contact with the ball. Michael Gonzalez just got squeezed up by one of the Nexus machines. Anthony Burrows was side by side with one of the TAM machines. That was the battle for 7th position, pardon me on that one. But that could have been trouble in that group, and that included Ryan Doucette, who's inside the top 5, Ricky.
Yeah, that definitely could have been trouble, as of course our leader Steven Wilson didn't want to hear anything about trouble, as he has a commanding lead right now with 2 laps to go. And I really hope for his sake that we don't get a caution here, knock on wood.
If they get the white flag, race is official. Through 3 and 4, white flag in hand by the flagman. 1 more mile to go for Steven Wilson. 1 to go, presented by iRacing. For Steven Wilson, the iRacing World of Outlaws, Morton Building's late model World Championship Pro driver, he's been looking to make his way into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Has looked strong on the points all season. And tonight, we'll say hello to Victory Lane. Steven Wilson tames the Monster Mile. He wins it at Dover. Second to Will Norton, Alan Bowes rounds out the top 3 with Honeycutt and Matheson holding on to the top 5, Blake.
Yeah, there were a lot of great runs up here in the top spot. You see Wilson and Bowes, obviously a 1 and 3 punch for Total Advantage Motorsports, and it seems like the rest of this field up here in the top 10 are all almost Nexus Esports drivers. Will Norton in 2nd, Caden Honeycutt 4th, Jake Matheson, Alec Martinez, Anthony Burrows, Ryan Doucette. I mean, you have to go all the way back to 9th before you find anybody that's not a Total Advantage or a Nexus Esports driver. So insane speed that these 2 teams brought to the track, and it certainly showed up today. And obviously Steven Wilson has had an incredibly strong season so far. With the drop, he was already leading the points. Without the drop, he was nearly doing the same. And I think after tonight, you may have to put him in the top of the board to not only secure his spot in the top 20 to get into the Pro Series, but perhaps take a run at this championship for the Road to Pro Series.
It's his 2nd victory of 2020 in Road to Pro, and a heck of a team performance for both Total Advantage Motorsport and for Nexus Esports. Let's take a look at your running order after an exciting finish and some dominant performances at Dover. The gap between 1st and 2nd, just above 0.8 of a second at the checker flag, with Will Norton coming home with 2nd spot. Alan Bowes rounds out the top 3 with Caden Honeycutt in P4. Jake Matheson rounds out the top 5 with Alec Martinez, and one of his strongest runs of the season up in 6th. Anthony Burrows saying hello to top split tonight comes home in 7th with Ryan Doucette with a good drive after some rough couple rounds in 8th. Brian Mercurio says hello to the top 10 as well. was one of the best long-run trucks of the night. He finishes in front of Michael Gonzalez, Blake.
And making his top split debut, and despite the damage that he had after that contact with Adam Gilliland, he's able to bring it home in 11th, so a solid points day for him. 12th is Briar LaPrade, 13th is Mitchell DeJong, 14th Justin Lisenby, 15th is Braden Buyos, 16th Seth DeMerchant drives up through the field and is able to hold on after that strategy call. 17th was Adam Gilliland, 18th Dylan Jones, 19th is Brian Blackford, and after looking awfully strong early on in the night, Garrett Maines rounds out the top 20.
21st is Femi Olat, followed by Drew Freenage in 22nd. Derek Justice 23rd. Last truck on the lead lap is Boyd Hogan in 24th. Jarrett Liebert 1 lap down in 25th. Michael Finlayson 26th. Zach Nichols in 27th. Casey Tucker, we saw his incident off turn 4. He's in 28th, 18 laps down, alongside Blake Neer in 29th. Jacob Hall in 30th. Jordy Lopez 31st. Donovan Strauss and Daniel Roper 32nd and 33rd, and followed by Trayton Lapsevich in 34th.
That's a look at your running order for tonight's action here on Podium Esports. We'll take a quick step aside when we come back with post-race coverage. Stick around. You're watching Podium Esports for coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series for the Monster Mile. Welcome back to Podium Esports for tonight's coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series from the virtual Dover International Speedway. Justin Prince alongside Blake McCandless, Ricky Sprinter, along with guest analyst Michael Guerrilla. Also joining us in the director's seat has been Ryan Bauer throughout the night. For the second time in 2020, it is Steven Wilson bringing Total Advantage Motorsport to victory lane. Had to work for this one indeed, with 57 led laps at the time of the checkered flag. He joins us for post-race coverage from the virtual victory lane. Steven, first things first, your second victory in Road to Pro in 9 races this season. How are you feeling bringing TAM back to victory lane once again?
It feels good. We definitely had a fast truck, faster than we thought we would be, and I was a lot faster than I thought I would be compared to my teammates, and we made a really good adjustment. I think it was the second pit stop after the super long green flag run that it just shot out of a cannon and we were hauling, and the last run I was just able to pull away. Jake kept up a little bit and then he burned it off, and then towards the end I was losing to Will, but still we were fast and able to get it done.
How much preparation was put in this truck tonight to have this type of pace? Because you look strong, your teammate Bose looks strong, and several drivers making some of their first and second appearances in top split action also came away with top 10s.
Yeah, there was a good amount of preparation. Actually, there was a lot of useless preparation, but we don't need to talk about that. And we thought we were off in testing quite a bit compared to people we were looking at times for, and we kept trying to try new things on the set, and we just didn't have anything going. So we went back to something we had like a week ago or something, and it just managed to work out. And good runs for Alan. I'm disappointed for Femi that he didn't get a finish he deserved. He was the fastest one of us all week in testing, and just sounded like he had a bad adjustment that didn't allow him to show his full speed. And Gonzo's first race in top split, and he finishes P10. That's good for him.
One thing I want to ask as well, you have that balance tonight, and this season overall as well, mind you, with competing in the World of Outlaws on that side in that World Championship, as well, mind you, of trying to join the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. How's been trying to find that balance in trying to find the good mixture of your driving style to try and get yourself into the Cup Series in the eNASCAR side while maintaining that same pace and speed you've been showing in the World of Outlaws this season?
Yeah, this is going a lot better than World of Outlaws this year, at least. This year I've been focused more, I would say, on the oval side. Last year when I was in World of Outlaws, I focused more on that, and I didn't run the full Road to Pro schedule, and so I was able to focus on that more. And the World of Outlaws on that side, the series this year is very, very competitive, and I don't have the pace that I did last year with everybody being faster, and there's a lot more competitive people. But that side, I have good teammates. They come home, or they bring great setups every week, just like oval side. We bring great setups, and preparation goes on both sides. Lots of laps get put in, and hopefully it pays out a little better on the dirt side in the coming weeks. But this side, we've been doing really great.
Indeed. The next race on the calendar, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and it's an interesting one because it's an afternoon race in July, mind you, at Las Vegas. Your thoughts going there where it may be very hot when the track gets all set to host the trucks?
Yeah, hopefully it's a really hot race. When the track is slick, it's a lot of fun to drive, and if it's if it's colder, then we'll probably be wide open for a few laps there, I would assume. But the hotter it is, the more later in the run you have to drive, and you have to drive better, drive more accurately, and it's just a lot of fun to wheel it around. And even with the trucks having less power than, say, the Xfinity cars or whatever above that, and we aren't lifting nearly as much as that, but it's still a lot of fun when it's a slick racetrack and we're sliding around. Like today, I was decently sliding around on exits, and it's a pretty cool track in here. So hopefully Vegas is pretty fun, and we're gonna have a good points gap going in there.
404 championship points earned with this victory tonight. Who do you want to thank for being a part of your checker flag this evening?
Well, first off, I'm going to thank Nathan Lyon for spotting. The last two interviews, I kind of bombed those and forgot about him, which is unfortunate, but I want to thank him. He's in the Coke Series and for Roush, and he's doing all right over there too, and I'm glad he can be over here to help me and makes me faster. And I want to thank everybody at Total Advantage, Landon Huffman, everybody at Dead Zone, Houston Hammer, Dustin, Colin, Alan, Femi, everybody that puts work in the sets. It's hard work. It's a lot of hard work that we do, and it's paying off, and we're getting good finishes to show for it.
Congratulations on the win tonight. Great work.
Thank you, guys.
That is Stephen Wilson coming home with the checker flag tonight. We've talked about the strong performances for Total Advantage Motorsport tonight, but Blake McCandless is standing by with the other team that dominated the entire top 10. Will Norton was the highest running truck for Nexus Esports. He's with Blake.
He carried the banner for Nexus last week to victory lane. This time he carries it to a second place finish for a driver, Will, that's been kind of on the outside of that top 20 bubble looking in. You really have to be pleased, not only with last week, but being able to come out here, run strong, and get some precious points that totals up to 391 after it's all said and done.
Yep, it's another good week for Nexus. We thought we were going to be pretty good, but it turned out honestly even better. But I think right before Darlington I was sitting somewhere in the 50s in points, about 300 out, so I'm expecting I'll be close to 100 in, maybe just outside. Either way, it's been a turnaround I never expected.
I was about to say, I know as somebody who even myself experienced their fair share of bad luck early in the season, and it's easy to get down and think that, these guys that are up here in the top of the standings are always going to be up front and always fast, because that's the reason they're up there, is because they perform well. So how has it been like for you to, even know that you're outside that top 20, to keep going in those test sessions, to keep the motivation up to try to work and try to get back into this thing?
Well, I want to say sometime before Darlington, I took a little break just because I felt like I was pushing myself too much, and that was only hurting me because I would, I don't know, try too hard and wouldn't learn anything.
Well, good with that, but you know, you have a lot of great work going on over there with Nexus Esports. I'll go ahead and hand the mic to you and allow you to give a shout out to those guys who helped you get here.
I gotta thank James Wenzel for the race set. I gotta thank Caden and Jarrett for working hard on Q and everything they all do. They work really hard, and it shows with the results we get.
It does. That's Will Norton. He was your winner last week at Darlington. He brings it home in what's probably one of the tougher two pairs of tracks on the schedule in Dover. We'll see him next time out at Las Vegas and see if he and his teammates will have enough to try and get all the way back into this Road to Pro season. And with that, we'll say goodbye to Will. We'll welcome into the booth Alan Bose, who has caught up with our very own Ricky Springer.
Yeah, standing here with Alan Bose tonight. He's second in the points. Alan, another great finish for you. What does this do for your confidence going into the last couple of races for the season here, knowing that you're well into the points with and without a drop race? Is it time to lay back and have a little fun with these races, or are you still up on the wheel trying to gain as many points as possible?
I think for sure it helps confidence out a lot, but the next two races are going to be key. If we can put together top 5 runs in both of the next races, then the last 3 races for somebody or for some people might be a little bit stressful, but for me that'd be pretty nice, just being able to go in there, know even if I wreck, I'm still sitting pretty good. So that's the goal, just get into a position where the last 3 races are pretty easy.
Yeah, and currently, even without a drop race, you're 4th in points, so very well set. But a great run tonight. What challenges did the Dover Speedway bring to you tonight with the, of course, the Monster Mile, as it's called out here? What kind of challenges did you have? Tight, loose? What was the truck doing for you?
For most of the race, it was pretty tight. Really, just keeping the right front on it was a challenge. That really long run that we had, the right front almost blew on me, but was able to get to the caution, get to the pits, made a few adjustments, and about the same as what Steven had there at the end actually, and I mean it just took off from there.
Yeah, in 2 Toyotas and a Ford inside the top 3, you're the first finishing Ford or up at the top half of the field. After running the Ford, you have more confidence in this truck than you would the Chevy or the Toyota.
I think it's about the same, honestly, but the average finish in the Ford is definitely a lot better than it was in the Chevy, so I definitely won't be changing off of the Ford for a while.
Yeah, definitely something to keep going with you with the string of good finishes, but after a good 3rd place finish on the podium tonight, you have anybody you'd like to say a thanks to?
Yeah, I got to thank Houston, and Houston, Dustin, Steven, all the guys that put in a lot of work all throughout the week. TA Motorsports for being on the truck, you know. Once again, Landon Huffman has given us a lot of support. It's been really cool. You know, putting together a run like this after the way that Darlington went for TA Motorsports, it was much needed, because we definitely missed the ball at Darlington. So, you know, we just got to keep putting together the good runs. That's as long as we can do that, we'll be just fine.
Yeah, and it is nice to see you up here speaking with us tonight, but that was Alan Bose, who's going to bring that Ford F-150 home in the 3rd spot tonight, Justin.
Once again, that was Alan Bose, Will Norton, Stephen Wilson joining us for post-race coverage here on the Podium Esports, for what was an exciting race to say the very least. Now, first things first, Michael, your thoughts on how this race played out from your perspective, because it looked like one where it was hard to pass, yes, but the mixture of being able to get your pit stops well dialed in, as well as maintaining that long run pace seemed to settle in.
Yeah, it definitely was interesting to see the long run actually come in during that second stint during the race after they had the early caution. But it was really important to see how the trucks favored. As we heard Bose say, he was struggling a little bit earlier on, but he was still able to pull out the result with the way the race played out. But yeah, it was interesting to see how the cautions fell. The tire strategy did come into play there at the end, but those who did gamble did not get paid off there at the end. Overall, it was pretty interesting to see how those people were able to come up to the front, especially with Gonzalez coming up from 24th to 10th and Burrows 19th to 7th. So it's interesting to see how the field flowed throughout the race.
Now, swing over to you, Ricky, because you mentioned the strong performance tonight for some of these drivers, especially with the points. Steven Wilson just so happens to be the highest ranked driver who has not made every single start. Only 8 of the 9 weeks he has taken part in, and he's up to second, and that's the without drop week point standings behind Jake Matheson. It's been a stellar campaign, and this type of night really set up the two teams we've talked about all evening, Total Advantage and Nexus, to where a majority of their drivers are now inside that top 20.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just these guys put in so much effort, and you could see by the way that Nexus was running at the beginning of the race with all of their trucks almost in a line there up at the front of the field. I mean, they're all on pretty much the same stuff, and it's not surprising to see that most of those drivers are inside of the top 20, if not all of them. And, you know, just teams like this, it's going to be interesting to see when they do get into the next level in their next journey to make it to the Coke Series. See how it all plays out for them as multiple teammates and see where people go team-wise when they get there.
Of note, amongst the drivers inside the top 20 without drops include North Force's Derek Justice shuffled to 7th, Mercurio inside the top 5 now, once again with that run. Andrew Freenage with a rough performance still inside the top 11 for Lowline, as well as a couple other drivers for various other teams, including Team VRS. But Blake, the next race, we've talked about it a little bit with some of the drivers, it's Las Vegas. Normally you don't see the trucks race in the afternoon, mind you, in the middle of the summertime. The weather could be very crucial when that race drops for the green flag and how the drivers handle the track in the summertime.
Well, it certainly could be, and you would think that that's the case. I thought that was going to be the case coming into tonight. Talked with a lot of these drivers pre-race about what their expectations were, and you can kind of get a grasp on what the weather might be looking at the practice sessions that get pulled up. But then, I'm even in a couple of group chats with drivers right now who just said that this was a curveball in terms of weather for Dover. So I don't anticipate that being the case when we go out to the hot desert in Vegas. Really anticipate that you're going to see high temperatures there. It'd be another shocker if we got temperatures as low as what we got tonight. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how these trucks handle when they're sliding around in slick, like you said, out there in Vegas in July. It can make for a very interesting show.
Well, you don't make it easy when it comes to the road to pro, to say the very least. You have to deal with a bunch of curveballs along the way to test the skill of not just the driver, but how they build their respective setups. It's going to be interesting who will be tested the best and who will win the said test and pass said tests when we go to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Once again, that'll be on July 21st, 9 p.m. Eastern Time is the start time for 134 laps under the afternoon sunshine at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Once again, you can catch that here on Podium Esports. But it's time to say goodbye for my fellow broadcast partners tonight, and Michael Guerrilla, Ricky Springer, and Blake McCandless. For director Ryan Bauer, for Gary Sexton and John Theodore at Podium Esports, I'm Justin Prince. Thank you very much for watching tonight's broadcast. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. We'll see you at Las Vegas.